Hi everybody, I'm Lexi from Harris County Public Library, and today I'm going to be coming at you guys with a video about how to create your very first character. But before we do so, there's a few resources that I would like to go over um, that will really help you out, especially if you're new to D&D and you're just trying to find your foot in the door, or you're just looking for some fun or something just to kind of introduce yourself into the game. So, the first thing I'm going to go over, again, the resources. There's a few big ones that I kind of want to go over. There's one on here that I have not put a space for, unfortunately. And that is Roll20. Roll20 is a really big one right now because it's an all virtual system for Dungeons and Dragons, and it's a really great system in which you can pretty much just hop online and look for a group, and sometimes you'll be lucky enough to find one that is willing to take in beginners and help you throughout your whole process. I know for me, I was really lucky the first time I played D&D because I had a great group and a great DM who actually did what we called a session 0, and that was the session in which we all just created our characters together. So if we had questions, if we were trying to figure something out, we were all right there together and we could figure it all out. Because if one of us didn't know it, somebody else was bound to have it in the group of 10. So anyways, Roll20 is a really great one, especially right now. Like I said before, it's all virtual, and all you have to do is hop on there, create an account. Majority of it's free. If you're a dungeon master, or as you'll hear me say later in this video, a DM, then there are some features that you may have to pay for, but if you're a player, it's pretty much all free. Secondly, we have our D&D Beyond resource. You'll hear everybody talk about this in the D&D realm. But this resource is really, really great because it has pretty much everything you need to know about D&D in one place. You can look up magic items, you can look up monster blocks if you're a DM, you can look up your very base character creations there. Again, since this resource is, majority of it is free, but there are some perks that you would have to pay for in order to gain access to. But it has stuff to where if you want to make a character and you just want to roll one out real quick, that's a great resource to use. And then we also have, if you're going to be playing a spellcaster, I highly recommend this app because unlike just writing them down on a piece of paper or having a bunch of cards, this app is called D&D 5e Spells. It's free to use, and you can create your character, like a sub-tab for your character, and then you can place all the spells that they know in there. It also will, if you select your class when you create that sub-character tab, it will generate the list that character can already pick from, and you can just pick from the list that's already filtered. So it makes it super easy, and then it has all of the spell descriptions and all of the requirements and all of that in there for you at the touch of your hand. But if you're a beginner, you might want to stay away from spellcastings at least for a little bit. I played a druid the first time I played, which is a full spellcaster, and I love that character, but it was very, very overwhelming as a first-time player for me. But like with D&D or any game, the more you play it, the more you get used to it over time. So again, D&D Beyond, Roll20, and then the D&D 5e spell resource. Those are some really great ones to help get you guys started. Now, what you actually need to create a character. So there are going to be 3 core essential things that you are going to need to create a character. You are going to need a PHB, which is called a player's handbook. You're going to need a character sheet. And then you're going to need dice, because the dice are your world. This is what's going to make up everything that you do in D&D, from what you know, from if you can hit your enemy, to anything. Like, everything in D&D, majority of it's all based off of how well you roll. So may the odds be ever in your favor. So those are the 3 things you're going to need. Now, if you don't want to spend the money on the PHP, then you can use D&D Beyond. You will be limited, but it will give you a good base start for your characters. And again, that's something that you really, I'm sorry, the D&D Beyond is something that's a really good resource because, again, it has all of the equipment stats, all of the information for items and utilities, as well as a whole bunch of other random stuff on there that I can never remember because I only use like a small portion of it, in all honesty. For the most part, I use Player's Handbook, a physical copy. So next, we're actually gonna delve into the character creation part. Yay! Okay, so 3 things you're gonna want to pick first. You are gonna want to pick your class, of course. What are you playing? Are you playing a fighter? Are you playing a wizard? Are you playing a barbarian? You're gonna want to pick your class, your background, and your class, your background, and your race. Those are 3 things that are the most important in order to make up your stats in D&D. Your class is going to give you pretty much all of your skill sets. Like, that is your profession. Your background is where you came from. So this is something that I always recommend as well, especially if you're into the RP side. Don't let the recommendations on D&D Beyond or the PHB dictate what your background is going to be. Because you can be a fighter, but your background, maybe you were a scholar. Like, while there may be some in there that, there may be some proficiencies in there that you may not get full use out of because of the class and the background not being like syncrotic. It does give you a lot more on the RP side of things. At least that's how I believe it to be. So those are your 3 things that you're going to want to pick from. Your race is going to give you, sometimes it'll give you a proficiency, and we'll talk about proficiencies here in a minute so you'll understand what I mean. Sometimes it'll give you a proficiency, or sometimes, like, if you're a tiefling race, you'll be able to cast certain spells once a day and at a certain level. So they kind of just give you different odds and ends. I know if you play an Eladrin, you actually get to change your seasons, which means it gets really convoluted, but it's a lot of fun once you really start getting into it. So each race has kind of like their own different perk that you get from playing that race. And then you'll also get benefits for when you roll your stats. So when we talk about rolling stats here in a minute, you're going to add whatever your race or whatever your race tells you to add to that as well. Excuse me. Okay. So now that we kind of covered class, race, and background, we're going to go into your 6 core stats. So you have 6 core stats. You have strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. These 6 core stats are basically going to make up your character. Who are they? Are they a charismatic person? Are they brute strength but not very intelligent? So these stats are pretty much going to make up everything that you do. So from your dice rolls to who your character is. So when you roll for these 6 stats, what you're going to do is you're going to take 4 d6s and you're going to roll them, and you're going to take the lowest one out. So you'll have 3 left. So say you roll a 6, a 2, a 5, and a 1. You'll take out the 1, and then that'll leave you with let's see, 10, 11, 12, 13 as your stat. And you'll put that in whatever stat blocks you want. Most people, they'll have a scratch piece of paper, they'll roll out their 6 stats, and then they'll then place the stats wherever they want to place them, because how you place your stats is really going to determine how well or how bad your character is in that area. So if you're a barbarian or a fighter, you don't want to have a low stat in strength or dex, because that's tend to be where you lean more in towards. If you're a wizard, you're going to want to put more of your stats into like intelligence. So it's really just, at this point, it's just playing with numbers. And then once you have those stats filled out, you can either Google or go to the player's handbook and look at the ability score modifiers. And those modifiers typically go in the larger box on top. So right here you can see I kind of had one filled out a little bit. But they'll go in the larger box, and then from there you'll start filling in all of the proficiencies that you got from your class, your background, and your race. So these proficiencies, what is proficiency? Proficiency is something that you have done repeatedly in your past or currently, and you have done it enough to become proficient in it. So that is actually going to be determined by your class level. So you'll see typically if you go to your character in either D&D Beyond or the PHB, you'll see, okay, there's this proficiency section that goes up by level. And normally it'll be the same for a few levels, and then it'll go up by 1. So say you're a level 1 fighter. You're going to have a +2 in your proficiency. So if you are proficient in, let's say, acrobatics, and you have a dexterity modifier of 3 and a proficiency bonus of 2, you're going to have a +5 in acrobatics. So not only are you adding, let's see if I can show you this again. So not only are you adding this proficiency bonus here, you're also going to add the ability modifier that you have here. And that's going to give you your total in whatever you're proficient in. Alright, I think that was it for proficiencies. Okay, so with the proficiencies, this is really about it. That's pretty much this whole section you see on this side. But then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and move into your armor class, initiative, and speed. So that's these 3 main blocks right up here in the center. I'm having to do everything backwards right now, so it's like really weird. Okay, so your initiative is going to be your +3. Sorry, not your +3. Your initiative is going to be your dexterity modifier. So I have a +3 on mine, so mine is a +3. Now, why do you want a separate block for your initiative if it's just the same dex modifier? Because once you start playing D&D, you will start gaining items or abilities or things like that that may affect your initiative. So certain classes have an advantage on their initiative rolls. So it's easier to mark that down in the initiative block versus having to cram it in with all of the other proficiencies and dexterity stuff that's already kind of mushed in there in that tight little section. Your speed is going to be determined by your race. And so there are classes, average speed is 30. So your humans, your tieflings, things like that. But there are bigger and smaller races such as Goliathans and gnomes. So those speeds are going to be, usually the smaller races are, I believe, 25. I don't think it goes any lower than that. I could be wrong. I don't know everything. But most speeds are 30. So that's something that's determined by your race. Now, what does speed mean? When you get into combat, basically what your speed means is that's how much you can move during your turn of combat. And then you're going to have your armor class, which is determined by your equipment, or if you're a spellcaster, possibly a spell. It just depends on what you're playing at that point. Alrighty, so we went over that. Now the next thing I'm going to go over is this small little box all the way down here called Features and Traits. This box actually is one of the ones in which is determined majority by your race and your background. So like I was saying before, sometimes your race will give you, like, again, a tiefling may give you the ability to cast certain spells at a certain level once per day. This is where you'll have the ability to mark down those benefits that you're getting from that class, or from that race and the background. Let's see. Okay. And that's pretty much it for that part. The next thing I'm going to go over, I'm so sorry. The next thing I'm going to go over is the dice. And now the dice make up everything in D&D, of course. And you'll see that quite a bit. So you're going to have what they call a 7 set of dice. And these are your core dice. These make up everything in D&D. Alright. So with dice, your main one is going to be your D20. 20-sided dice. You'll hear me say it quite a bit, in which it's just, when I say D, it's just short for dice. So you have your D20, which makes up everything. If you can hit your target, if you can remember or recall certain information, if you want to know certain parts of history, if you want to make a religion check, sleight of hand check, this is the dice you're always going to roll. And then, of course, when you roll it, you're going to add whatever your modifier is to that skill. So if you have no modifier in that skill set, it'll just be a +0. Or if you may not be proficient in the skill, you'll just add the group modifier for it. So again, if I wasn't proficient in acrobatics, it's a dex skill, so I would just add whatever my dex modifier is. Alright, so next you have your D12. This guy you won't see used a whole lot unless you are a barbarian, or basically that's really the only one I've seen so far that uses a D12, and it's for its health. There are very few spells that actually use a D12 for their spellcasting damage, but that is one of them. Sometimes you'll hear somebody ask for a D12 or a D12 roll, but it's one that I rarely see used in most instances. Next, you're going to have your 2 D10s. So these are your 10-sided dice. Now you're going to see one of them has 1 number on it, and the other has 2 numbers on it. So that's because one of these dice is your percentage dice. If somebody asks for a percentage roll, you're going to take both dice and roll them, and you're going to total whatever it is you get to roll. So if you roll an 80 and a 6, that means you got an 86%. If you roll 3 zeros, that means you got a 100. If you roll 2 zeros and a 1, that means it's 1%. That confused me for a little bit when I first started playing D&D, because I always thought it would have made more sense for that to be the 100. But that's not the case, unfortunately. That means you rolled a 1%. So anyways, so those are your 2 D10 rolls. And you'll see those used quite frequently, especially with spellcasters and things of the like. And then next, you're going to see these next 3 dice are the ones that are probably rolled the most frequently in D&D. You have your D8. In my opinion, this is used the most as for spellcasting as well, if you're not casting a cantrip. But you got your D8, your D6, which is what we rolled for our stats earlier for. Again, this is just your normal 6-sided die. And then, of course, you got your D4. This tiny little thing. Don't drop them because they hurt when you step on them. They're worse than Legos, in my opinion. So anyways, those are all your dice, and the majority of them you're either going to be rolling for your hit points, or at least when you're making your stats, you're going to be rolling something other than your D6 to get your hit points, especially as you get into higher levels. So you have those, and then I think that's pretty much it for the majority of this. I'm going to go over... Lastly, I guess I'll go over the 2 optional sheets for a character real quick. And again, I'm not going to go into extreme details about this because I am recommending, if you are a first-time player, to play a melee character because spells can be really overwhelming. But if you're up for the challenge, absolutely go for it. So you have your, if you are a spellcaster, you'll see a sheet like this, and this is going to be your spellcasting sheet. These are going to be the spells that you know, and what you can cast, how many spell slots you have, what your spell ability modifier is, what your save DC is, and what your bonuses, if any, are. So again, there's a lot to it. That's kind of why I'm not going into it just yet with this video. And then lastly, you're going to have pretty much your RP sheet, is what I like to call it. This tells you your personality, your bonds, your flaws, and your ideals, background, allies, enemies. All of this is what you get to make up yourself. You don't have to roll for it. It's not set in a book. This is the stuff you get to make up about your character, about who they are, and where they come from. And then, of course, the bottom half of the sheet is just additional features, and then your equipment and your inventory, basically. So that was a really quick rundown of how to create your first character with D&D. Hopefully I did good. I don't know. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them below in the comment section, and I will try to do my best to answer them. If you guys have any recommendations for the next video, which we will be doing next Thursday at the same time, same place here on Facebook. And definitely check us out. Check out our other videos. I know my other librarian coworkers have been putting out lots of videos, so there are many other things for you guys to check out, so you'll never be bored. But I think that's it. Bye, everybody!